Please be seated.
I'll
remind you that we will receive the applications and questions until the end of the program. You can either use the phone number 8800 200 40 40, send an SMS or MMS to 04040, or use the social media of Contact and Klasniki, or use the website moscowputin.rf, or use the chatbot on Max Messenger, used for the first time. And this is a very, very popular channel today. Now we have more than 2.5 million questions, and we're about to begin asking President Putin questions. And just a couple of words, Ekaterina and I have sifted through tens of thousands of your questions
from all across Russia, from abroad, and of course out of these 2 million questions there are messages from different people. Understandably, many of these topics are overlapping, and we've tried to systematize, to classify the questions, to make sure that we cover the topics that are of relevance to millions of people. And understandably, there's one topic that is of the greatest importance to everyone. There are many issues and questions on social policies, but in the forefront are the issues of peace and war. You've said on multiple occasions that we are okay with how the things are going at the battlefront, but is it going to be peace, or is it going to be continuation, given what Zelensky is saying? So far, we're not seeing the willingness, but let's remember what all of this started from. It was back with the coup d'etat in Ukraine back in 2014, as well as the deception about there being a possibility to address all of the issues via Minsk agreements. But afterwards, in 2022, when everything was on the verge, when the Kyiv regime, the Ukrainian regime, basically unleashed a war in the southeast part of Ukraine, we said that we would have to recognize the unrecognized republics. It would be better if you leave these people in peace and let them leave without Russophobia, without coup d'etat. Just withdraw your troops from there. Back then, they didn't want to do that, and after Istanbul, at first, they basically initialed those drafts, and then they basically threw them in the bin. And this is what we're seeing right now. They're basically refusing to finish this conflict via peaceful means. That said, we are seeing things, and we know there are signals, including from the Kyiv regime, indicating that they are willing to engage in some type of dialogue. The only thing, and I would like to say something that we've been saying for quite some time, we are willing to put an end to this conflict via peaceful means, based on the principles that I outlined in July last year when I spoke at the Foreign Ministry of Russia. The root causes that brought about this conflict have to be addressed. Mr. President, the situation on the battlefront is changing day in, day out. We know that you follow everything almost in real time, talking to our heroes, to our soldiers, but the situation is changing on a daily basis. Our soldiers are getting ahead audaciously and steadily. As Commander-in-Chief, what's your assessment of the current state of affairs? I've just listened to the report by the head of the General Staff. On the whole, I can tell you that right after our troops expelled the adversary from the Kursk region, the initiative, the strategic initiative, to be more precise, is firmly in the hands of the Russian armed forces. What does it mean? It means that our forces are advancing along the whole line of contact. At some places, they are moving ahead faster, sometimes slower, but everywhere along the line of contact, the adversary is being pushed back. And most importantly, and we started with this, you said, and I said, that there were proposals to the Kyiv regime to withdraw their troops from those unrecognized, back then they were recognized republics, who didn't want to leave under the yoke of the Kyiv nationalists, By then, the Kiev regime had been building fortified positions in the agglomeration of Slavyansk and Kramatorsk, Konstantinivka. This was the most fortified region. So let's start with what is currently unfolding over there. Just recently, the head of the General Staff, the head of the group of forces, as well as the local commanders, the head of the brigade that I received at my office, reported me on having taken Seversk, which is an important settlement, and from there it's possible to move closer to one of the most fortified regions, to part of this agglomeration, which is Slavyansk. A little to the south from there, our armed forces are active in the South Liman direction. The troops are in the city already. The battle is raging, and very soon it'll be taken. A huge percentage is under our control, but the advancement is going to continue. I said that Konstantinivka is part of this agglomeration, and the battle is already there. More than 50% of Konstantinivka is under Russian control. I have no doubt whatsoever that this settlement is going to be taken as well. There was an important development, namely the taking of Krasnoarmeysk, because from Krasnoarmeysk, the competent level of the armed forces will have to make a decision on which direction to take, but this is a very good bridgehead to continue offensive operations. And to the south, northeast, there is the city of Dmitrov, which is also an important bridgehead, and it is completely encircled. I think around 50% of the city will have been taken by our forces. By now, the adversary did not get an order or the command to lay down arms. They're trying to break the encirclement, moving in small groups. They're undertaking attempts to take back at least parts of Krasnoarmeysk. In vain so far. The adversary is sustaining significant losses and seeing no success. Another group of Russian armed forces, East Vostok Group, is making great headway across Zaporozhye region, liberating one settlement after another. As you know, currently the battle is taking place in Hulai-Polye. The city is divided by a river into two parts. The biggest is on the opposite part of the river. This barrier has been bridged, and the battle is raging inside the city, but an important part of the group of force of Vostok is moving even further, liberating one settlement after another in Zaporozhye region. Moreover, safety and security zones are being set up in Sumy region, the city of Volchansk, in Kharkov region, as is well known. Currently, several weeks ago, Kupiansk was taken by the Russian forces. So far, our forces are not moving, but they are in control. The thing is, their most important task is to eliminate the group of the forces of the adversary on the left bank of Oskol River and to take another settlement, which is basically a hub, a transport hub, which is Kupiansk-Uzlovoy. There is a group of forces that is encircled there, 15 battalions, 3,500 soldiers who didn't get a command to withdraw either, and they have no chances whatsoever. They are heavily encircled by the Russian armed forces. And once our units have completed their task, they will move further west. I'm confident that by the end of the year, we will have seen new successes by our armed forces, by our soldiers, by our warriors at the line of contact. And what about Seversk? What is the current state of affairs? And why was it so difficult to take this settlement? You must have seen, you must have heard the briefing of the head of the General Staff, as well as the head of the group of forces, the group of armies, the commander, as well as the head of the brigade that is engaged in hostilities there. I asked him, what's your current take on the situation in Seversk? Are you firmly in control? He said, Mr. President, we are moving even further west. 1.5, 2 kilometers, my brigade has already made that movement in the west, and this movement is continuing. You probably remember there was this briefing on Seversk, and we had a report of the assault group from the spot, from Seversk. If you remember, at the end, I asked them to change their position as soon as possible once the report was over. And I think it was yesterday, because time is flying by. We had a meeting at the Ministry of Defense, and once the collegium was over, there was an award ceremony for our warriors. Was it yesterday or the day before yesterday? Yeah, there was an award ceremony for those who participated in the liberation of Seversk, and once that was over, I went back to the Kremlin, to my office, and I asked the head of the assault group to come by, see me, because I wanted to talk to him about the current agenda. I do that from time to time when an opportunity presents itself. And we also had a meeting on the preparations for today's event, and he came straight to the room of the Security Council, and I asked him to say a couple of words so that every colleague can hear what's the current state of affairs in Seversk, how it happened, and he started recounting, just a couple of words, very briefly. And once he went away, colleagues asked whether we could invite him to the direct line. I said, well, you can ask him, but his leave is not that long, so, we phoned him, and he's here. He agreed. Naran Alexeyevich. There he is. Naran, is that correct? Yes, please, be seated. Take your seat, Am I correct? Is this how this happened? Yes. If you've got any questions about what is happening in Seversk and how the liberation took place, you can ask him directly. I think it's going to be better. Let's give a round of applause to a hero of Russia. Let's welcome him. Naran Alexeyevich, we saw you during that TV bridge, but we don't know you personally. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where are you from? How long have you been participating in the special military operation? Where did you start? I'm from Kalmykia. I started from Solidar. First I was just an assault soldier, and now I'm head of the assault unit. Well, he started just as a driver, and right now he is a head of an assault unit, and more than 80 people are under his command. And he's also a hero of the Russian Federation. Don't be modest. Naran Alexeyevich, colleagues, journalists must have seen this this meeting between President and yourself and the colleagues. The communication was spotty at best because of the signal. Right now we've got more time, and could you tell us a little bit about how Siversk was liberated? We would very much like to learn how it happened. Of course, share what you can share, what your soldiers did. I can repeat my question. I said when he came to the room of the Security Council, what was the most difficult? Well, the most difficult thing was to get to Seversk in secret, because, you know, these were open fields, there were no natural shelters. That's why a decision had been made to move in small groups, clandestinely, and we managed to perform this task. We managed to accumulate forces right under the nose of the adversary, and once the accumulation happened, we waited for the command to start assault. There were many civilians that were staying in Seversk. What was the attitude of the armed forces of Ukraine to civilians? For quite some time, the civilians had been living, how shall I put it? Well, yes, they've been living in fear, under the pressure of the adversary, and once we managed to liberate our zone, that was our responsibility. We started to talk to the civilians, and they told us that the Ukrainian armed forces had been behaving just like nationalists, shooting those who didn't want to evacuate with them. So civilians didn't have any arms, and they were shot at because they were willing to stay in the city just for this simple fact. And once our armed forces arrived there, how were you welcomed? When we came, people were in a very difficult state, both physically and morally, and when they saw us, they were very happy. They had been listening in secret to Russian radio, waiting for us to arrive, and they were very happy. Naran Alexeyevich, you said that when the armed forces of Ukraine were withdrawing, they were shooting the civilians. And back then you said that they were shooting down young people, yes, especially young people under 30, under 40. They were simply taken away without judge and summarily shot down without exception. What's your current take on what's happening in this part of the front line? On the whole, it's stable, as I reported to Mr. President. We moved even further beyond Seversk. Naran Alexeyevich, when we look at you, when we listen to you, we want to repeat once again that our warriors are true warriors, true men. And what's the morale of your guys, of your soldiers, those who are under your command? We are working conscientiously and steadily, pursuing the tasks set before us by the Commander-in-Chief, and the goals of the Special Military Operations will be accomplished. Naran Alexeyevich, how many people are there under your command, and what are the losses that you've sustained? In my assault group, I've got 157 people, and when Seversk was being liberated, 24 groups had been employed to the total number of 84 people. There were minimum losses because we were moving in small groups. 4 men were lost out of 84. Those 84 have been participating in the assault itself. Let's thank the hero of Russia once again. Now that we've listened to all of that, I would like to ask you, just a week ago, Zelensky allegedly made a video next to the steel there's a column next to Kupiansk. Many thought it was a fake video. Is that a fake? How Zelensky decided to publish that at such an important, crucial moment? Well, I'm not following that, but, following what he's doing. But he's an artist and a talented one to boot, so there's nothing surprising about that. They're saying that this obelisk looks completely different from what it used to. But be that as it may, this obelisk is 1 kilometer or so from the city. Well, why stay at the threshold? Do come in. If Kupiansk is under their control, why not go in the city itself? And there were some women bloggers. They managed to get by. Luckily, nothing happened to them because, the sky is swarming like with flies, but not with flies, with UAVs, and there are UAVs both from the Ukrainian side, from the Russian side. That settlement so easily. The time will come once our soldiers have completed the elimination of the group of forces of Ukraine that is encircled in the east part, and then they will turn and go westward.
It will be very soon. This is just the question of time, if there are no other problems. As for other fake stuff or attempts at any cost to return the lost positions as it is done now, and I would like to underline that it is done at any cost. The adversary has no success. The problem is that as a result of active and effective actions of our armed forces, the adversary has suffered really serious losses of strategic reserves, and they have almost nothing left. This is a meaningful component, and this should give an impetus to the Kyiv regime to solve all the disputes and to end this conflict peacefully. They almost have no reserves. I think that everyone who's watching us and everyone here in the whole war is a grave burden for the economy. Well, as you said, the European baby pigs continue doing everything to destroy Russian economy. Well, in such harsh conditions, can we even think about further economic growth? Somewhere we keep growing in some sectors, but somewhere there is no economic growth. What are these sectors? Well, as usually, I have brought a table with me. It's like that. These are open data. What happened in our economy throughout the previous year? The GDP growth was 1%. But if we take 3 previous years, this is also a correct indicator. The common growth was 9.7%. At the same time, the EU growth was 3.1%. As for the 1% growth this year, these were conscious actions of the government and the central bank and the whole government of our country regarding the targeting inflation. We need to point out that in general, we managed to solve this task. We had a goal to decrease the inflation up to 6%, but by the end of the year it will be less than 6%, 5.7, 5.8%. But the decrease of the economic growth rate. This is the cost of preserving the quality of the economy, of the macroeconomic indicators. Let's go forward. The industrial production increased by 1%, manufacturing industry increased 3.1%. As for the agricultural produce, it increased 3.3%. An important question is housing construction. Millions of square kilometers were constructed. Last year it was 107.8. This year the indicator is lower, but it is also good. 103, 105 square kilometers. Million of square meters. We manage to preserve a very good indicator of real salaries. They're not as high as last year, but still, I think the indicator is very good. The real salaries, without inflation, is going to be 4.5%. Unfortunately, we must be honest, throughout this period of time, the growth of labor productivity is going to be very modest, 1.1%. And we need to change that, of course, in order to increase labor productivity. As for unemployment level, last year I said it was record low historically. It was 2.5%. This year it is even lower, 2.2%. In general, these are very good indicators. International reserves of the central bank are growing. I have just spoken to the governor of the central bank. Like just several days ago, $741.5 billion US. As for the budget deficit, budget of the federal budget, 2.6%. Next year, we think that it's going to be 1.6%. As for the 3 years period, it should be around 1.5%. This is a very good indicator regarding our state debt. It's one of the lowest among the developed companies. We have made some. We have spoken with our colleagues. It is 7.7%, and in the next 3 years, it will not be more than 20%. Well, these are the indicators. What is more important, the principal thing is that we have to thank the government for the hard work they have implemented. They managed to balance the budget. The quality of this balancing is of the level of 2021. This is a very important indicator of stability of the economy and financial system of our country. It means that we will be able to fully implement the issues regarding the social obligations to the population, also solve development issues regarding national projects. We will reach technological development goals. As well as, without any doubt, we will ensure the necessities of the armed forces. And all of this combined speaks about the stability of the economy and financial system, which is absolutely under the control of the government and the central bank. Well, the journalists would like also to ask their question. Our format is combined. This is a direct line in the big press conference. So let us start, give the floor to the journalists. Let's start with the center, Siberia. Let's start with Siberia, please. Hello, Mr. Putin. Novosibirsk, Ivan Dvaynichnikov, Gorодская Volna Radio. Everyone knows that Novosibirsk is famous. And it's a famous city, and in the recent years, with your support, Siberian Circle photon source was started to be constructed, this is a unique plant, a unique facility, not only for our country, but for the whole world. It will allow us to implement new investigations. Despite sanctions, despite harsh economic conditions, we managed to create fully Russian production. We need to launch it. We are going to launch it next year. The question is it really possible, and what we need to do for the young scientists to work there? Next year we're going to launch it, and we are waiting for you at the opening ceremony. Thank you for reminding about this. This is a good news, which is very good for everyone participating in the process. This topic appeared during the Council on Science at the auspices of the President of Russia, which was in 2018. The colleagues from the Siberian Institute of Science, the Institute of Nuclear Physics, spoke about the necessity of creating such accelerator. Truly, we had some problems, slowdowns because of sanctions, but we managed to complete this work. This is great, and I would like to thank everyone who had to do anything with this project, and I would like to congratulate you on that. This is truly a success. Well, the same thing goes for the Kurchatov Institute here in Moscow, but this is the second stage facility. A lot has to be changed. We are planning to do that. At the same time, we are going to create the same facility in Vladivostok and in other cities as well. We are going to work on that. As for your facility, SCIF, this is a great success because it gives an opportunity not only to have investigation of a fundamental nature, but also of an applied nature. This is truly important because this will give an opportunity to work in the sphere of pharmaceuticals and new materials and so on and so forth. But how to keep young experts? We have a whole system that is functioning, but the main thing is that we need to create laboratories because true scientists are truly talented ones and dedicated ones, and they also, but social aspects are also very important. The salaries, the conditions for living there, and all of this is what we're going to work on. In the future, this is one of our goals. We have a grant system for this and mega grants. We know the scientists that are called mega granters. These are the scientists receiving such mega grants. We have raised this issue at one of the meetings with them. So we need to create conditions so that young experts would keep working there. We need to create a horizon for them to be seen, the horizon of investigation, not for 2-3 years, but for 5 years or more. And we have already done this, and this allows us to prevent the outflow of stuff. Many people come back. I have personally spoken to such scientists. These are young experts that used to work abroad, but they come back to Russia, the native land. And our so-called Western colleagues help us very much in this. Why they come back? First of all, there are great laboratories, great opportunities, but one of the main causes is that they are really concerned about their kids, because it is impossible to send kids to the schools in those countries. Well, we have protection of traditional values on the agenda. And together with the other conditions, they decide to come back to Russia. And there are more and more such people. Well, we'll keep working on all of these tracks. I'll try to come to visit. Let's give two more opportunities, a couple of opportunities to journalists. Please don't shout. Well, I have the patriarch of the Kremlin pool, Alexander Gamov. Please. Alexander, if you have a question, you haven't raised your hand. Yes, please. Thank you very much. Alexander Gamov, radio and newspaper Komsomolskaya Pravda. Mr. Putin, this year Komsomolskaya Pravda celebrates 100 years since the publication of the first newspaper. We have received an order of valiant labors. Thank you for this high praise. We would like to thank you. I would like to remind that the first direct line was hosted by us. But, well, I have a question from our newspaper. I would like to know how now is developing or implementing the program of the Time of Heroes. You were the initiator of this program. Do you follow this project? How people participating in this program cope with their work? Those people who are now working as the leaders of regions, how justified is this program and how long we're going to have this program? What are the postings we're going to see? Thank you. First of all, let's remember the participants of the Great Patriotic War, those who were fighting in the fronts of the Great Patriotic War, came back. They reached great results in culture, in science and education. When I went to university, I had teachers who were participating in the Great Patriotic War. We respected them greatly. There was those who were gravely injured. I had a teacher who didn't have a leg and he had a prosthesis, but he was an excellent expert in his sphere. We all remember him with gratitude. And we remember the knowledge that he gave us. Let's remember Mr. Nikulin. And there are so many scientists who excelled in their spheres and truly truly were important for the development of our country. And the participants of the special military operation. Let's take Narina Alexeyevich. I couldn't recognize him really because the hall is very big, but he was given a mic, and there is a camera, people knowing what they're doing. But when he entered the Security Council in Kremlin, he spoke there and everyone was looking at him very carefully. There is great potential that the people, the guys from the Special Military Operation have. But this is one thing to fight, and there is other thing to be a leader of a team or be a head of a big company or a region or a ministry. You need a talent for that. Of course, there are hundreds of thousands of soldiers in the Special Military Operations Zone. Not everyone wants to have such a career, civil career, but those who want and those who have potential, who have education, experience, are ready to receive it. It means that the government must do everything to give such opportunities to these people that are truly ready to fight for the interests of their own country. I've already explained how this idea appeared. I met young people, students. I looked at them. I looked at how they were communicating their ideas. What were their goals? What are the promising goals for the country, by their opinion? So when I listened to them, I had this idea. It's important to give opportunity to such people, such young people, to stimulate them. Of course, we need to prepare them, to train them, without any doubt. That is why we started this program. I thank the heads of the regions of the Russian Federation for promoting this program regionally, and it is truly functioning, and I'm truly glad for the people who participated in the first stage and the second stage. Some of them have become governors, vice ministers. They work in our biggest... Several people work in the presidential administration, and they are truly successful. Of course, there are some difficulties. Some of them may try to work in some other sphere, but the program itself is functioning successfully. Mr. Putin, colleagues, there is a very important piece of news from Brussels. There was the failure, it was a real failure to take the assets. They cannot steal them, but they are trying, but still they cannot do this. Well, stealing is not really correct definition for that. Stealing, this is when someone is doing it secretly, and they are doing it openly. This is a robbery. This is a robbery. Why they fail to do this? Why they fail to implement this robbery? Because the consequences can be really harsh for the robbers. Why is that? It's really hard to do that, because they declare that they're not going to rob it, to take it. The idea is to make a credit using our assets. But you cannot just give out a loan. This will make consequences for the budget of a country, and it increases the budget debt of every country. If someone gives a loan, even secured by our foreign assets, it must be reflected in the budget of a country that does it.
For example, in France, the public debt is 120%, and ours is at 17%. And our budget deficit is 2.6%. Next year is going to be 1.6%. In France, it is 6% per annum. So, and now they will assume additional liabilities, and it will be quite hard to pass such a budget. And all these are the reasons for the difficulty of taking decisions related to the robbery of someone else's assets, but there will be graver consequences of those who might endeavor that. This will not be a blow to their image, but this will subvert all the confidence with the euro area. Actually, very many countries store their foreign reserves in the eurozone. Many of those having spare money, like the oil-producing countries, if they have a look at what might be happening, they will have doubts, and they already have doubts and concerns. But what if this happens? You know, well begun, it can be further replicated. They might think. Now some people dislike the conduct of the special military operation and the fight against neo-Nazism in Ukraine. And next, someone might not like the fight, the struggle with the LGBT movement. And Muslim countries have stringent laws to this respect, and this might be another pretext for the alleged expropriation of sovereign assets. Why not? And they might find other pretexts. So that will entail image-related losses and direct financial monetary losses related to the contemporary financial architecture. And the main thing is, no matter what they steal, sooner or later they'll have to give it back. And most importantly, we will go to court to protect our interests. We will do our utmost to find a jurisdiction that will be independent from the political context. Let's come to the room and ask questions from the hall. The road of life, I see the sign.
Здравствуйте, Владимир Владимирович. Дарья Шучалина, Республика Коми. Представляю информагентство Коминформ, являюсь членом Общественной палаты нашего региона. Вы знаете, значительная часть Республики Коми и соседний с нами Ненецкий автономный округ отрезаны от большой земли, поскольку не имеют личного автомобильного
there is no direct automobile transportation and connection. So there's a dead end of the automobile road, but at the same time the Syktyvkar-Uhtau-Sinsk-Chornaryan-Mar trunk road spanning more than 600 kilometers going through our republic, and that provides for all the year-round procurement for the north and safe traffic for the northern residents. But the bulk of that segment, the biggest part of this segment is in a very deplorable state, and we lack regional funds to repair this road. And Komi has very few federal roads, unlike other regions of Russia. So the proposal, whether this road of life, the only trunk way for the north, can be transferred to the federal property so that the safe and secure communication with the north is safeguarded. And using this opportunity, I'd like to invite you to the Republic of Komi. In the 2029, the city of Uhtau will mark 100th anniversary. Today, it's the biggest oil and gas center in the north of Russia, and shortly Syktyvkar will mark 250 years thanks to your decree. And if you are able to come to the festivities, we will be so grateful. It's going to be a historic and landmark visit for us. Well, thank you for the invitation. With respect to the road, I'm aware of this problem. Indeed, transferring all the segments of that trunk road to the federal level, as there is a task of raising all federal trunk roads to certain quality standards, and this is almost complete. And now we are tackling the regional roads quality, but it can be broken down into several sub-issues: the northern procurement and the safety, traffic and road safety. So I cannot promise that we're going to start right away tomorrow, but I'll talk to the government and we'll find a way to respond and react. But thank you for the invitation. Mr. President, yes. So it's a combined format, it's a hybrid format, so we will ask questions, we'll receive questions from different sources. Channel 1, the third row, this is our front correspondent. I'm Ilya Supov, war correspondent from Channel 1. I have 3 questions, hope to be succinct. First is from the battlefield drone operators. All of them thank you for the big number of assault drones. Some of them can stop columns like Prince Vandal of Nizhny Novgorod, but we actually lack hexacopters, the Baba Yaga type. They are used actively in droves by Ukrainians, and we need those too, this type too, because the sky is dominated by the drones, and it's even used to carry a bottle of water, so the guys are agog to receive those. And the second question is from the operators, and one of the guys in the trenches told me a baby will be born shortly in my family. Will you miss the front line? I asked him. Yes, I will, and he will miss the control of the UAVs actually. So we have lots of UAV operators, and their number is increasing, and they also want to continue doing that in peaceful life. as being civilians. Will that come in handy? Will their experience and expertise come in handy? And the final question is from me. We work with a brigade of veterans who are knowledgeable for their underground operations, subterranean subway operations, Avdiivka, Dzержинsk and others, but this brigade, despite all the merits, is called like a voluntary group in many reports of the Defense Ministry. If I may, will you please assign this brigade the name of Guards Brigade, Brigade of Guards, the honorary name? Thank you. I'll start with your final point. The Brigade of Veterans deserves the highest assessments, and they are heroes. But it's not only about risking lives and going through a tube. The point is that they are meticulous and hair-splitting and responsible in preparing each operation of theirs. And a lot of preparations were done with all the driveways and procurement and exit points and enter points. These are heroes, no doubt. And this brigade deserves the highest assessments, and it should be granted the name of a Guards Brigade. I agree with you. Secondly, the point that you started with, that about control of drones. We are lacking heavy UAVs, and this is what the Defense Ministry and the defense industry are getting to grips with, and the Defense Minister personally has been looking into the matter. To a large extent, the situation with drones has considerably improved, and the guys on the conflict line now feel that, and will keep supporting our contemporary inventors with a system of grants and support measures. And I'd like to thank our caring people and entrepreneurs. They have collected 83 billion rubles of donations, and that was spent on different things, but to a large extent on drones. I must say directly and frankly, one shouldn't shy that. We have become leaders. We still lack those heavy drones like Baba Yaga type, but with respect to the number of drones, we are ahead of our adversary on all the segments of the front line. This is an obvious fact, a hard fact. Now, with respect to the civil life application, in order to confirm this leadership, well, this can be confirmed actually only if those items used in fighting will be applied in civilian and peaceful life. And it will also be used there will be the dual use of these items to improve the combat efficiency of our country. And all the delivery of mail and medicines and food will be conducted with the help of UAVs, like the airplane type or small copters, air-based ones. I'm speaking about the UAVs in general, airborne and seaborne, and we are making big headway in this respect, and this will have the support of the government in future. Now, with respect to the fighters on the front line that want to continue doing what they have been doing, well, this is a peculiar thing, because the point is that we continue a good rate of manning, and now we have a lot of volunteers that want to volunteer to the front, conclude contracts to join the army, and they volunteer to defend their motherland and the interests of our people. We just mentioned how the Ukrainian military treat the civilians, and a person told me, when we saw what they did to civilians, we just are agog, very impatient to move on and finish off this viper. They execute old people, elderly, and they use helicopters to do that, to target civilians, actually. He might be shy because it's the first time that he ends up in such an audience. And more than 406 or 10,000 people have enrolled, concluding a contract, and the number of people who want to do service in this new branch of the army, the unmanned aerial systems branch, is so big that the Defense Ministry has to open a call for that. And there are students, young ones, who take an academic leave to sign a contract and join the army. And they participate, they are eager to participate in this competition, and they want to participate as drone operators. So I can understand the person that you spoke to, but actually even those who come on leave, come home on leave, they continue participating in the fighting because the remote technology allows that. And to follow up on the fighters topic, you said, Mr. President, that it's not a trendy phenomenon, but it's the obligation of the government. So, and we looked through a lot of applications. Paul and I looked through a lot of applications, and GigaChat confirms that this year the number of applications from the fighters and their families is much lower than in the previous year or the penultimate year. So work is underway to assist them, to help them. Still some problems remaining related to delays and the search for the missing. Still a lot is done just in a matter of days. For example, Alexei Gushin from the Lov region wrote to us he was gravely wounded 2 years ago, and he wasn't able to receive a payout of 3 million because not all the documents were available. And finally, the amount was accrued, and one of these days he's to receive the full amount. And the mother of a fallen hero, Lyudmila Orlova from Beloretsk, said that her son lost his life last year and was posthumously decorated with a medal, but she could not receive this medal. And finally, the volunteers looked into the matter, and now the mother has received her son's posthumous decoration. And she tried to get it for a year, and only after caring, attentive, and thoughtful people attended to that, this was resolved. And just yesterday or the day before yesterday, you said at the Defense Ministry College that there is still room for advancement. And now we'll have a look at a video from Kristina from Novosibirsk. Good afternoon. My name is Grebe Kristina. I'm a widow of a fallen serviceman. We live in the city of Novosibirsk, and there are 2 kids left of 4 and 6 years of age. So the question is, currently I would not receive the pension or of a fallen serviceman and other benefits. My husband lost his life in January 2024. On the 10th of December that year, I received the death certificate. And, a year passed since then, and we're yet lacking this pension. Can the timeline for consideration of these applications be expedited so that the pension on the grounds of a loss of the breadwinner is allotted on time, should be allotted on time? Christina, first of all, I want to apologize to you for this huge delay of the relevant services, on the part of the relevant services, and in your case it's going to be resolved quickly, but the problem is in existence, and not long ago I had a meeting with Madam Tsivilova Anna, who reported me on the work of the Fund of Fatherland Defenders. And she's Deputy Defense Minister now, and she has told me that still the proper interaction between the Defense Ministry and the welfare unit of the government is not properly established, and there is a lot of red tape, and documents are lost while being transferred from one agency to another, and decisions are delayed and postponed, but we will work on that to expedite the thing. I will definitely keep track of that personally. I'll look into this issue. We should be swifter and quicker so that rid people of additional difficulties, like in your case when they have 2 kids left after the tragedy. But there is also another issue pending, which is obvious from some of the questions received via various channels, and Mr. Peskov has handed me a file full of such questions and applications, the search for the missing serviceman, and in the case of Christina, I hope the problem she's faced with is going to be resolved quite quickly without any procrastination.
Now, as for the search for missing in action, this is a topic of particular relevance, and I have to tell you that the Ministry of Defense has taken several steps with a view to addressing this problem. To be more precise, a coordinated center has been set up, which is charged with searching for the servicemen missing in action. Special units have been established in relevant units, and groups, a special registry has been set up as well. And if we look at the beginning of the year and at how things stand today, we'll see that the number of those who were thought to be missing in action has decreased by 50% as compared to the beginning of the year. So there is a 3-time difference. Of course, this work has to continue and it has to be improved. Rest assured, we'll do everything to make sure that the losses are brought down to a minimum. Mr. President, the issue of MIIs is very important. I know that even among our colleagues, journalists, there are family, close friends who were participating in the SMO and who were considered to be MIIs. I think everyone will support you if we'll ask you to give an instruction to make sure that there is a special control, special surveillance of the issues from family. We have to remember about the issue of those who are missing in action and those who have been taken prisoner. Well, the instructions are there, and we're working together with the Ministry of Defense. Let's work with the audience. A couple of questions, several questions from the room, from the audience. Third row of this section, I think the Mir TV company. Yes, the lady in red. Thank you, Mr. Peskov. Good afternoon, Mr. President. Elena Dashkova, Mir TV channel. The issue of phone fraudsters is very acute. What about the measures taken by the government? Have they worked? Do you have any statistics on how we've managed to bring down a number of citizens who've been defrauded by these fraudsters? Yes, we've got some statistics. These measures have worked, they've yielded some results, and I think a lot has and should be done to address this issue. The number of such crimes has decreased by 7%, as the Ministry of the Interior has briefed me, and the losses have decreased by 33%. On the whole, there are some positive results, but I would like to address the citizens of the country. Fraud is still very much an issue. And the more sophisticated our devices are getting, the more sophisticated our life is becoming. Fraudsters are becoming increasingly sophisticated in their turn in the ways they use to defraud the citizens and to swindle them and take their money. So whoever talks to you, whoever is calling you, and given the AI capabilities, if someone starts talking to you about money, about property, just put down the phone. Just put down the phone right away. If someone is talking to you about property or money, not a single word. If banks, or there's someone personally. If you want to address an issue, just go in person, see someone from the bank. I would like to ask you not to talk about money or property on the phone. More questions from the room. I would like to ask the journalists to be as succinct as possible. Yes, we see a young man here, young gentleman, Children's Editorial Office. Good afternoon, Mr. President. My name is Maxim Zakharov. I'm with the Children's Editorial Office. Recently, you said that sometimes you drive a car across Moscow streets incognito. And when you speak at meetings or right now, you are in possession of a treasure trove of information. I would like to ask you how you get this information about what people really need. Well, I didn't say that exactly like that I drive incognito, that I drive myself. I'm just saying that sometimes I drive without the accompanying police cars and all that. And, these vouchers, as it were, are useful because from the car window, it's very interesting to look not just at the road I usually take to get from my residence to the Kremlin and vice versa. It's very interesting to look at different neighborhoods of Moscow. It's interesting and curious to see what's happening around. As far as verified information I get is concerned, I think the most important thing that provides me with that information, well, this is an event like this. Just imagine 2.5 million people have sent their messages and questions to the direct line. Of course, it's impossible to cover all of that and process all of that in the course of these several hours we've got. But, 2.5 million messages They're about issues that people hold dear to their heart. This will be processed by AI for a year. This information will be processed by my loyal assistance from the Popular Front. This is the front. This is the source of information about what people really need and what they're interested in. And of course, I get information from special services as well as from law enforcement agencies. And I'm trying to use that information not just in an aggregate form to personalize, but also I'd like to see the original documents, and I'd like to meet people, personally talk to them when I have work and visits across the country. It's very important to talk directly to people because it gives a lease of fresh life to what we're doing. You see the needs of the people, and of course, polls by social studies agencies. Of course, people take these polls differently, but mostly these are polls of a professional nature. And of course, sometimes people are not happy with average numbers, with mean numbers, because these figures have nothing to do with what people are facing in real life. But these average data are important because they give us an understanding of what is happening in general across the country. So this is a variety of sources which provide me with a fairly objective picture of what is happening in the country. A couple of more questions from the audience. Yakutia, yes, please. Good afternoon, Mr. President. Oleg Kolosov, Saka TV. We represent the coldest place in the world. Right now, the temperature is minus 50 degrees centigrade. The climate is inclement, and in that inclement climate, we highly cherish warmth and unity. 2026 is a year of unity of Russian nations and peoples, and we're all aware that the special military operation is bringing unity. And as a military correspondent, I know that our servicemen are fighting shoulder to shoulder regardless of their religion or ethnic belonging, and they have this chevron, this shoulder patch. God with us, we're Russian. So what kind of patch would you choose for this year of unity? And next year we are opening a unique center of epos and arts, and also an arts school that is being built at your instruction. We'd like to take this opportunity to invite you. Yakutia is also known for its cinema, and right now a film is being made about a hero of Russia. So we will look forward to getting your support for this movie, as well as for both for making the movie and also what kind of measures will be taken to support different Russian peoples and nations. We pursue a deliberate policy of supporting different languages and cultures and arts of different peoples living in the Russian Federation. We're doing that via school, via media, via literature. You've mentioned several avenues in Yakutia, and the people of Yakutia are very talented. It's no coincidence that a music school is being built there. I was once visited that, and it's developing. Young people, young children from all across different settlements and towns and cities get together and they engage in creativity. Cinematography has taken off in Yakutia as well. Yakutia is developing very fast. Moreover, Yakutia is also providing us with servicemen which are unparalleled across the world, I suppose. And you've mentioned this film, this movie. We will certainly do everything to support that film once it's released and before, in the run-up to its release. And as far as this year of unity of Russian peoples is concerned, I think this is the right thing to do, especially amid the special military operation, because when a country is faced with such trials and tribulations, it rallies together. And as you aptly mentioned, people, when they are under fire, don't care what religion they profess, what ethnic group they belong to. There's a joke in such situations. If there is a God, and I do not doubt there is a God, but people are divided in different churches, but that may be very well may be so, but we all share common values, all peoples of the Russian Federation. And in the course of the special military operation, that is something that is getting increasingly to the forefront. We can see that. It's apparent and evident. We see that very well. I just remembered, we have just spoken the reports on the taking of the city of Seversk. You remember I had a commander of one of the brigades in my office during that report. Once the reports were over, the video link was shut down, and I started to talk about the zone he was responsible for at the front line. We spoke about some daily matters, and all of a sudden he tells me, I don't feel comfortable because I'm here, whereas my comrade, head of the very same brigade that is fighting shoulder to shoulder, he is back there at the front line. You and I, we're talking about addressing some daily needs, whereas he is fighting, but he's just as good as I am. And I tell him, who is he? And he said, he's from Dagestan. He's from a small ethnic group in Dagestan. He's a genuine warrior, a Russian patriot, as well as a brilliant commander. And I said, it's impossible for everyone to be here. You are here because that the commander of the group of armies has decided that someone needs to stay at the front line. But I say, let's try to give him a call. I took up the phone, and via military connection, we managed to find that second commander of the brigade he had spoken about. He was at the command point on site. We spoke, and then I passed the phone to the commander of the brigade, who was with me in the office. And what's interesting? Among men, there's this call, when they call one another. But, when real officer says that, it's really something special. He says, "Hi, brother." Yes, men do call that one another, but, when real military commanders say that, this is testimony to the unity of the peoples, nations of the Russian Federation, who will do everything in our power to strengthen this process and to push it forward. Thank you. Another question from the audience before we get back to our moderators. First row, the blue jacket. Yes, please. Introduce yourself. Vladimir Serokov, good afternoon. RBC Radio next year ushers in many changes in taxation with a view to mobilizing budget revenue. What's the financial effect you're expecting, and will you relax these restrictions and tightenings when
Welcome back. You're watching RT International. We are, of course, watching President Putin's end of the year marathon Q&A. He's been talking now and fielding questions for about an hour and a half, and it's likely to go on at least another 4 hours. So just to wrap up, what's been asked so far? First up, the obvious big question, when will the Ukraine conflict end? What's the latest? President Putin reiterating Moscow is ready to negotiate. It wants to resolve this conflict through peaceful means, but the red lines for Russia remain the same. He said Ukraine is preventing a resolution. However, there are some signals that Kiev does want to engage in some kind of dialogue. On the ground, since the liberation of Kursk, the initiative is firmly in the hands of Russian forces, and there's little doubt that Konstantinovka will be taken next. In all directions, Kiev forces are retreating. However, he said the Kiev government are stopping them, or preventing the troops from surrendering there. More questions on economic growth in general. Russian GDP grew by 9.7% in the last 3 years compared to EU GDP, which rose by 3.1%. And domestic issues have really dominated as well the Q&A a lot, with a lot of issues on quality of roads, inflation, employment figures. One question also from the widow of a fallen soldier who asked about expediting the financial support for her, the pension, since losing her husband. Mr. Putin promised to speed up this process. He would be personally looking into that and dealing with it specifically. So that's what we have so far. Plenty more questions to come, so make sure you stay with us for all the latest. Just bringing you up to speed on other world news now. A divided European Union is not going to be using frozen Russian assets to fund its Ukraine support and will borrow money instead from global markets. Hungary's Viktor Orban, however, is a sharp critic of the decision and says it brings the bloc closer to war.
I think it's a bad decision. All the others, except the Czechs and Slovaks, think that it was a good decision. I think it was an extremely bad decision, which brings Europe closer to the war. And it looks like a loan, but of course the Ukrainians will never be able to pay it back. So it's basically lost money. And those who are behind that loan will take the responsibility and the financial consequences of that. 3 countries decided not to be part of it. That's an opt-out for Czech Republic, Slovakia and Hungary. So we are innocent.
The negotiations, they moved through the entire night, and only at 3 a.m. in Brussels were EU leaders able to come to a conclusion in terms of what they're going to do with the funding for Ukraine. So let's go through some of the details. Firstly, the EU didn't agree to directly seize the frozen Russian assets. They've agreed to borrow money from financial markets. That's 90 billion euros that will be directly channeled towards Ukraine. Secondly, the Russian assets will remain frozen but untouched for now. Now, the EU's position is that these Russian assets will only be returned to Russia if Russia pays reparations to Ukraine. However, Russia has stated that if their assets are seized, then this will be considered as theft, and legal actions as well as retaliatory measures might have to be taken. So many leaders, what's interesting to consider is many leaders such as France's President Macron and Germany's Chancellor Merz have stated their interest in actually using these assets. However, they've said that in order to gain access to them, there needs to be a qualified majority vote, and currently there is no qualified majority vote. So in terms of the loan, well, it comes with 0 interest, and the European bloc has stated that Ukraine will not need to pay back the loan unless Russia compensates for the war damages. So not all EU countries support this approach. 3 countries have already opted out. That's Hungary, the Czech Republic and Slovakia, which shows that there really is quite a division within the bloc right now regarding this issue. And many European leaders have stated that they have no choice. This is why they're taking this course of action. And some have even stated that the fact that they've even been able to come up with such a plan shows that there is unity within them. So let's take a listen to what they had to say.
3 countries decided not to participate in this loan. Do you think that the EU is still united on Ukraine? And don't you fear that the more the time will pass, the more the leader some leader will stop to support these type of actions.
I think I will put it this way: as long as we are able to take the necessary decisions, then we are united. I'm looking in the results and the conclusions, and today is a good example that when something is necessary, then we are able to deliver.
There are different opinions, different positions, namely on Ukraine. But what is important, in spite of this diversity of positions, we reach to take the decisions when we need to take the decisions.
Now, the 90 billion euros are meant to cover Ukraine's financial and military budget for the next 2 years. However, EU leaders say that support will not stop there. Ursula von der Leyen said that the support will go beyond 2027. However, discussions regarding this will be held later. And EU leaders have basically said that all of this is happening because Russia is deemed as an imminent threat to Europe. Let's take a listen to what the Danish Prime Minister had to say.
Europe is facing the greatest challenges since the end of the Second World War. Russia's brutal war against Ukraine, hybrid attacks, a global uncertainty, and therefore it has been a key priority for Denmark during the presidency to make, or at least to do our part, to ensure that Europe is as strong as possible and, of course, to support Ukraine. After 4 years of war and now a hybrid war going on against all of us, then I don't think it has any, there's no idea of looking at Russia from a eastern or western or northern or southern perspective, because they are threatening the entire European continent and, of course, unfortunately also our European Union.
For leaders like Denmark's Prime Minister, this debate, it's no longer about intention, it's about perceived threat. And Moscow has consistently said that it's open for talks, it's open for diplomacy. It poses no threat to Europe. And if we take a look at what's happening right now with Washington and Moscow, well, they're trying to strike a deal in terms of a course of action for there to be peace in Ukraine right now. Just recently, Trump said that peace could not be nearer. And then if we take a look at Europe, well, it doesn't seem like they're going to limit their involvement in the conflict anytime soon, or if they're going to pull out their support anytime soon. So we'll really have to see how this develops.
Russian Special Presidential Envoy Kirill Dmitriev says warmongers in the EU failed to bully countries taking the risky path of using Russian assets.
Fatal blow to Ursula, Merz, Starmer, and the warmongers. They burned political capital pushing illegal moves against Russia's reserves and failed. There's no alternative, they said. Apparently there is. The whole world just watched you fail to bully others into breaking the law.
Although the Russian assets won't be used, Ursula von der Leyen claims the EU has the right to use cash balances from them to finance a Kiev loan. We spoke with economist Jack Rasmus, who says Europe needs the war to justify its rising debt.
Europe is trying to raise debt in order to do two things. One is to continue funding Ukraine, because the U.S. is going to pull out in the next 6 months funding Ukraine. So if Europe wants the war, and it does, to continue, it needs to raise money to finance that war. Europe wants the war to continue because Europe needs the war in order to justify raising huge amounts of debt to remilitarize its economy. That's what's going on now with stealing Russian assets and so forth. The Russian assets are a kind of interim 2 to 3 year bridge until the Europeans can get their own fiscal system going and bond system going that would allow them to remilitarize, build their own military-industrial complex, because the U.S. has been giving them that umbrella for 70 years. That's over. They've got to remilitarize themselves. They've got to get the money somewhere. The only way they can get it is to raise bonds and debt, because their real economy is in such a funk. It's not growing for 15 years, the European economy. They can't fund their remilitarization out of economic growth. They got to raise debt.
And as EU leaders scrambled to put together Ukraine funding, farmers in Brussels were out in force on Thursday to protest a planned free trade deal. Heavy machinery was used to block roads and piles of car tyres were set ablaze. Police used water cannon against the demonstrators as they marched towards the European Commission building. Some 7,000 farmers joined the rally in the Belgian capital, saying the deal endangers their livelihoods. And Vladimir Zelensky, who was also in Brussels for that meeting, admitted he's always known the US establishment doesn't want to see Ukraine join NATO. And in a peculiar aside, he added that that position might shift eventually as political leaders depart the stage.
The policy is consistent, to be honest. In the United States of America, it does not change regarding Ukraine's membership in NATO. They don't see us there for now, but this is now. Maybe in the future, the position will change. Maybe someone will realize that a strong Ukrainian army strengthens NATO, not the other way around. So this is a matter of policy. The world is changing. Someone lives, someone dies. That's life.
Well, a former Greek ambassador to multiple nations, Leonidas Chrysanthopoulos, says the EU's obsession over using frozen Russian assets is undermining any momentum for peace.
These talks should actually not be happening now. I mean, the moment that there is a big discussion taking place between the US and Russia to find a peaceful solution for the Ukraine, this discussion that's taking place now for these assets is actually undermining these discussions that are being held between the US and Russia. That's one thing. The other thing is, I believe that Germany is behind this whole story. I mean, von der Leyen was a former Minister of Defense of Germany. She's in very close cooperation with Berlin. And I would like to stress that Germany does not have the moral authority to ask for these funds for the Ukraine. Why? Because Germany owes Greece more than 1 trillion euros for the damages on war, for the damages that she did in Greece during the Second World War, which Germany refuses to pay.
Russian President Vladimir Putin is currently holding his end-of-the-year Q&A session with the nation's most pressing questions. They're flooding in from all over the country. He's going to be there for hours. Let's cross live to RT correspondent Igor Zhdanov to find out what's been discussed so far. So, Igor, you've been watching closely. Tell us some of the highlights so far, would you please?
Absolutely, Nikki. Indeed, we are approaching the second hour of this big media conference and also a Q&A with the population. So it has been already well over an hour. But for Vladimir Putin, these are truly rookie numbers because he's known to speak, to answer questions for 3, 4, sometimes even closer to 5 hours. So indeed, this is just the beginning. We're not even past the equator. So far, Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, he dived straight into the situation on the front lines. It is yet another time that he briefs the population and briefs the public on the situation on the Ukrainian front. Here he took a moment, or rather he took his sweet time, talking about Russia's advances on the front line. He breaking down pretty much what the situation is like on every part, in every section of the front, going meticulously from one region to another. Summing this all up, of course, is the Russian troops. They are advancing all across the entirety of the front line. In some areas, the advances are happening at a faster pace. In other parts, they have been slowed down to a trickle. But still, the Russian armed forces, they are crawling they're crawling westward, and successes are everywhere. He talked about the Ukrainian garrison being surrounded in Mirnograd. Well, now the Russian president has already referred to that town as Dmitrov, and that is the previous name of that town before the Ukrainian authorities began trying to get rid of all the Soviet legacy in the Donbass. And here's, in general, how Vladimir Putin summed up the latest and the biggest successes of the Russian armed forces on the front line.
Immediately after our troops drove the enemy from Kursk, the initiative passed entirely into the hands of the Russian armed forces. I am confident that by the end of this year, we will witness further successes of our armed forces along the line of contact. The city of Kupiansk came under our control several weeks ago. Our troops are in control of the city, but are not yet advancing west, as they face a very important task: eliminating the group on the left bank of the Oskol River and recapturing another settlement. The group encircled there is significant: 15 battalions, 3,500 men. They, too, have not received the order to lay down their arms. Their chances are virtually nil. They are tightly surrounded by our armed forces.
Now, all this doesn't look good for Kiev at all, especially given the context, given the timeline and the time frame that all of this is happening. That's amid a tedious peace process being brokered by the United States. And of course, the United States, Donald Trump infamously told Zelensky in public that he held no cards. And since then, really no cards added to the table. And Zelensky has been running out of options and running out of leverage, which had already been scarce. I mean, pretty much the only strong card that he did have in his hand was the Ukrainian presence in the Kursk region of Russia. But that really became the downfall of the Ukrainian troops, because after the Russian army kicked them out of the Kursk region, well, that's when the front began to slowly collapse for the Ukrainian troops elsewhere. So Zelensky has been in a crisis management mode, full on, pretty much in the fifth gear, trying to convince his allies, mainly the United States, because Europe so far has been more or less on board with Zelensky's plan to continue the war. But Zelensky has been trying to convince the United States that Ukraine is still in this fight, that they can still achieve victory, or at least something that can be sold as victory. So Zelensky, he did a bit of a stunt when he published a video of him standing, claiming that he was standing on the outskirts of the city of Kupiansk. That's another cauldron. That's where another cauldron was created by the Russian armed forces. And Zelensky, he would try to portray it as if he was there on the very outskirts, it means that the city was at least partially back under the Ukrainian control. Now, two things went wrong for Zelensky there. First, independent analysts, they checked out the latest footage from that very crossroads, from that stela, and it looked completely different compared to Zelensky's video. The nets, the fish nets that were installed around the road there to protect moving fighters from FPV drones, those fish nets, they looked battered and absolutely destroyed in latest videos, while in Zelensky's video, those fish nets were pretty much in a pristine state. All that raising questions and concerns that really that video shot by Zelensky, it was shot sometime earlier, probably months ago, and was just kept there, conserved and waiting for its moment, for an ample moment to be published by Zelensky. And Vladimir Putin, addressing a question about that very video of Zelensky, he said that, well, Zelensky, no irony, is a talented actor, and this stunt is very much in his character.
He is an artist, and a talented one. I say this without any irony. We know this from his films back in earlier times, so there is nothing unusual here. They say that Stella looks completely different now, but that's not the point. Stella is located some distance away from the city, roughly several kilometers. So why stand on the doorstep? Come into the house. That's right, if Kupiansk is under their control. The time will come when the guys finish their combat mission against the encircled group on the eastern bank of the river, then turn around and move west. It's only a matter of time. As for trying to retake positions at any cost, as is being done now in the Krasnoarmeysk area, the opposing side has had no success.
Well, indeed, they have been trying to retake anything they can at any cost, that meaning the Ukrainian armed forces, of course. At the same time, geopolitically, internationally, Ukraine has been experiencing hard times as well, because even Europe, a steadfast supporter and ally of Ukraine since the very beginning of Russia's special military operation back in 2022, now Europe has been bickering about whether or not they should take and basically steal Russia's assets that are being frozen in Belgium right now and give them to Ukraine. Now, there has been a strong push by Germany, by the UK, by France to go ahead with this plan. Other nations, they have opposed it, mainly Belgium itself, which had been previously entrusted with Russia's assets, and they have been saying, well, if you do that, then we should all share the risks of Russia retaliating and responding in a similar manner and, nationalizing European assets that are in Moscow, that are in Russia. And so lately, just overnight, the European Union, they held a vote and they decided, so far, they have decided against pretty much what Vladimir Putin called, quote-unquote, a robbery. They decided not to touch Russia's frozen assets just yet. And, well, here's how the Russian president commented on this vote.
Theft is the covert act of stealing, and this is robbery. But why isn't this robbery being carried out? Because the consequences for the robbers could be severe.
Subscribe to One India and never miss an update. Download the One India app now.